Okay, abusia, yebe mo bibia kwa bada abusia press conference bi akoso Attorney General Dominic Ajene etimi ahodu press conference abusia full speech na oman no na yede bremu abusia ensem akoso papa sa sika former NPP appointees edino abusia se mu nketwa ene yetete gift oware mode no says kanu na nye 500 2.2 billion abusia ensem akoso no ensem no ano ede na me waste time na momienko ne nkonkoti Attorney General ensem ode tu dwa na na ebeko no make sure say dwumadi onya like ya obe like subscribe to the channel na afen so share dwumadi no ma fofo nsa entumi enkabi medamase
Parliament, because we have to take you to the presidency right now. Dr. Dominic Ayeni is the Attorney General. He is taking his turn again in the Government Accountability Series. And the most important is that there's a big case for oral, which he's unraveling the details of to the entire country right now. Let's take you to the Jubilee House for a listen.
Without recourse to due process, are held to account. So he set up the oral committee to look into claims of corruption against certain individuals. Subsequent to that, the committee presented this report, which was expeditiously handed over to the Attorney General for further work so that dockets could be built and prosecutions commenced. Since the beginning of this administration, the Attorney General has periodically briefed the people of Ghana on progress made in this regard. Today, he is here once again to update us on progress made in the implementation of Operation Recover All Loots, and then also lay bare the facts surrounding a case that he has dubbed Ramble in the Jungle. Without taking any more of your time, I am going to invite the Attorney General, the Honorable Dominic Ayeni, to take center stage and present his briefing. Thank you very much.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen of the media, and good morning to my fellow Ghanaians, or fellow countrymen and women, as I usually say. As the Minister for Government Communications has indicated, I am here this morning to account to the sovereign people of Ghana, as has been my practice since assuming office as Attorney General and Minister of Justice. Today, I will do two things. Firstly, I will provide update on the oral investigations we've been conducting and the oral related prosecutions that have been filed so far. Second, you would recall that on March 20th, 2025, when I announced the Kobna Aduboye investigation, I referred to an ongoing investigation as the Rumble in the Jungle. The reference was to the buffer stock criminal investigation. I will this morning announce the conclusion of investigations into the elaborate criminal enterprise that started in 2018 after the appointment of Hanan Abdul Wahab as Chief Executive Officer of the Buffer Stock Company. Ladies and gentlemen, as far as the oral investigations are concerned, the status report is as follows. Out of the report of the oral committee submitted to my office, we instructed the National Intelligence Bureau in March 2025 to conduct investigations into cases of suspected acts of theft and graft by public officials and their allies in the private sector. The investigations were necessary because the oral committee reports did not contain the evidence required to prove the guilt of the suspects in court beyond reasonable doubt. It is always important to remember that the oral committee was tasked by His Excellency the President to receive complaints of looting of state resources, and complaints do not constitute irrefutable evidence of criminality. Our investigators have diligently concluded investigations in the following cases: the SkyTrain, National Service Ghost Name Scandal, District Road Improvement Project, or DRIP, National Lotteries, Palgo Multipurpose Dam, SML, Frontier Healthcare Services, Free Wi-Fi, National Ambulance, Bonkra Integrated Inland Logistics Terminal, Sputnik V vaccines case, and the land looting cases. In the case of the land looting cases, 8 have been completed, and then 1 is outstanding. Now, ladies and gentlemen, let me give you a sense of what pertains. When the dockets are brought to my office, and the latest set of dockets were brought 2 weeks ago, I go through them diligently with the prosecution staff, the attorneys in the prosecution division, and other lawyers we work with, and then we can build a case and advise the investigators as to what to do when we find loopholes that may be exploited by defense attorneys. So I want to give 2 examples. In the case of the Bonkra Integrated Inland Logistics Terminal, the report has been returned to my office. We have done our reading of the report and analysis of it, and we've come to the conclusion that there is a need for us to have a value for money audit, because that is the only way by which will determine the extent to which there was malfeasance relating to the finances of the project. But so far, nothing has been discovered that should, cause us to take action in court in terms of criminality. I'll give another example. The District Road Improvement Project, which is DRIP. We did the investigation. The preliminary report was returned to my office. I studied it. I gave directions as to what to do. And the investigators have went back to do their work. And they came back with a report that I can tell you has, pinpointed certain acts of malfeasance that we are working on. So, for instance, in the case of DRIP, they were overpaid. That is, JA Plant Pool was overpaid by $2 million. The contract sum was 176 million United States of American dollars. On the face of the contract, that is the sum that was stated. When we examined the invoices of payments, it was 178 million that was paid. So right away, there was a difference of $2 million. So we asked that $2 million be paid back by JA Plant Pool. We also realized that 190 pieces of equipment were added and cleared without payment of tax. In other words, they were added to the list as if they were tax exempt. I asked the investigators to go back, look at the HS code, and for those of you, HS code is a harmonized code that the customs officers use to determine the classification and taxes applicable to goods. When they did the analysis following the HS code, it came out that 38.7 million Ghana cedis of taxes were evaded. So in respect of the 2 sums, that is the $2 million, JH Plant Pool has been asked, we have made a demand on them to pay that money. Then when it comes to the taxes, we have asked GRA, because under the tax laws, it is GRA that can make a demand for the payment of the taxes. So we've asked that GRA should make a demand for the 38.7 million. Now that is our investigators' assessment. GRA may come out with a different figure because they are the tax experts. So our investigators' figure may be confirmed or even adjusted upwards depending on what the GRA says. Now, when it comes to the issue of over-invoicing, we noticed that they were over-invoiced by between, that is the equipment, the DRIP equipment were over-invoiced by between 100 to 300%. All right, so I give you an example. One piece of equipment which costs $40,000, the government paid $84,000 for that equipment. That is over 110%. And so we are now diligently looking through all the equipment, and you can imagine that the equipment for all the districts, there were, hundreds of pieces of equipment. So we are going through each one of them because we are looking at a criminal investigation, and in criminal law, charges must be specific. If you miss the element of specificity, your case will be thrown out. And that is why I keep urging Ghanaians to be patient, because we need diligent investigation so that when I send a case to court, we don't have any doubt that criminality has occurred. So, ladies and gentlemen, prosecutions have commenced in the SkyTrain and National Service scandals. In the case of the latter, we have filed charges against the former Chief Executive, Executive Director, Osea Sibe-Ntwi, and his deputy, Gifty Owari. Charges are being prepared against the rest of the public officers and the so-called marketplace vendors. In all, we intend to file about 10 cases in the NSA scandal and will use some of the public officers and vendors as prosecution witnesses. Now, this is a strategy that is working very well for us, and we intend to continue to use that strategy. In a situation where there is a small criminal among big criminals, and the small criminal knows a lot, it is better as a matter of prosecutorial strategy to use a small criminal to get the information in order to be able to succeed, and that is what I'm doing. Also, I wish to announce that the Auditor General has conducted a forensic audit into the NSA, the National Service scandal, and the total amount of money stolen or illegally spent now stands at 2.2 billion, and not the 548 million that was uncovered by my investigators as at June 2025. And then, ladies and gentlemen, I have here a copy of the Auditor General's report. Again, painstaking investigation is very important in criminal matters. And so, based upon what the Auditor General has done, and this is a forensic audit, okay? Forensic audit means that they've gone beyond what ordinary, auditing would have done. And so, we are going to, based upon this, in some cases, change the charge, amend our charge sheets in order to bring fresh charges. Investigations are still ongoing in respect of the following matters: All African Games, mathematical sets, Bank of Ghana new building, stadia renovation, and National Cathedral. In the case of the National Cathedral, we have actually requested that the Auditor General should conduct another forensic audit, and he's being held by one of the big four accounting companies to be able to do this. Ladies and gentlemen, now to the rumble in the jungle. The buffer stock investigation, which are nicknamed the rumble in the jungle, as at March 2020, when we announced the arrest and detention of suspects Kobne Dubohi and his wife Angela Eje Boateng, the Economic and Organized Crime Office had gathered credible intelligence regarding a criminal enterprise that had been operated by the former Chief Executive Officer of the National Food and Buffer Stock Company Limited, Mr. Hanan Abdul Wahab. Initial estimates put the amount of money pilfered by Mr. Abdul Wahab and his collaborators at the time at around 58 million Ghana cedis, far in excess of the 49 million suspected to have been stolen by Mr. Edubohe and his co-accused persons. I call the criminal enterprise operated by Abdul Wahab and his collaborators at Buffer Stock the rumble in the jungle, not only because of the huge amount of money at stake, but because of the fact that while food suppliers were wailing and gnashing their teeth due to failure to pay them for supplies to the Buffer Stock, and while our school kids were being denied nutrition under the school feeding program for lack of funds, Mr. Abdul Wahab and his collaborators were busy lawlessly looting funds meant for the program. That is jungle behavior. The informal meaning of the word rumble is to discover illicit activity or the perpetrator of the illicit activity. Through painstaking investigations, the EOCO discovered this illicit criminal enterprise run by a gang of corrupt, lawless officials at the Buffer Stock Company. On June 25, 2025, the EOCO conducted a coordinated operation based upon their initial investigations, which resulted in the arrest of Mr. Abdul Wahab, former Chief Executive of Buffer Stock, his wife Faiza Seydou Wuni, and then James Atieku, the Buffer Stock Manager for the Northern Sector, who was based in Tamale. The operation also led to the arrest of Emmanuel Atta, Head of Corporate Affairs of NAFCO. The arrest followed initial intelligence and assessment by EOCO, who suggested that while serving as CEO of Buffer Stock, between 2017 and 2024, Mr. Abdul Wahab colluded with his wife, Faiza Seidu, Richard Sam, Head of Finance, Bismarck Owusu Boache, Finance Department, and Emmanuel Atta, Corporate Affairs Manager, and others to create an elaborate criminal enterprise that was used to steal and launder public funds from the Buffer Stock Company. Within the period between 2017 and 2024, Mr. Abdul Wahab, in concert with Richard Sam Asante and Bismarck Owusu Boache, orchestrated the transfer of 78,269,084 Ghana cedis and 4 pesos from the bank accounts of Buffer Stock Company to a private company linked to Hanan Abdul Wahab, his wife, and staff of Buffer Stock at Republic Bank and EcoBank. Evidence shows that the funds were instantly retransferred to companies owned by Abdul Wahab himself and companies and entities owned and associated with him and his wife. Similarly, evidence shows that between 2017 and May 2029, Abdul Wahab, sorry, can I have? Thank you. My name is Majority Leader, I just want to find out between December 2017 and May 2019, Hanan Abdul Wahab transferred 5,495,780 Ghana cedis and 36 pesos from Buffer Stock Company accounts to 2 bank accounts belonging to Aludiba Enterprise, one of his companies at Republic Bank and ABSA. Aludiba Enterprise is not a registered supplier of Buffer Stock Company. Hanan Abdul Wahab between 2019 to January 2022 also orchestrated some suppliers to transfer an amount of 11,998,830 Ghana cedis, 48 pesos to an entity owned by a staff of Buffer Stock, and later instructed the staff to retransfer the funds to a company owned and run by himself and his wife. In July 2022, investigations found that Hanan Abdul Wahab transferred 251,050 cedis from Buffer Stock accounts to another bank account at Republic Bank belonging to Energy Partners, a company co-owned by Hanan Abdul Wahab and Emmanuel Atta, the head of corporate affairs of Buffer Stock Company. Energy Partners is not a service provider for Buffer Stock. The evidence gathered so far shows that they run this criminal enterprise under the pretext of supplying food items to schools under the school feeding program. Ladies and gentlemen, 7 entities linked to Abdul Wahab and his wife were used as vehicles to receive and to launder the proceeds of crime from Buffer Stock Company. The money laundering took the form of property acquisitions across the country, including real estate and luxury goods using the same entities. The entities in question are as follows: Alkani Enterprise, Aludiba Enterprise, Energy Partners, Farhauser Ventures, Farhauser Company Limited, and Aludiba Foundation, and also, and more importantly, Sortina Enterprise, owned by a third party connected to the couple. So Sortina was owned by Atiku Apau, who was then the Northern Sector Manager of Buffer Stock. Bank documents obtained by EOCO revealed that within the period that the suspects operated this criminal enterprise, Mr. Abdul Wahab and his wife and their entities became the largest depositors at Republic Bank, and the branch was at Labone branch. Investigations established that in 2018, Sortina Enterprise, an entity owned by James Atiku Apau, applied to become a licensed supplier to the Buffer Stock Company. This application was approved by his boss, Hanan Abdul Wahab, knowing very well that the approval placed James Atiku Apau in a conflict of interest situation. Because he was the manager of Buffer Stock in the Northern Sector, he formed a company and became a supplier to Buffer Stock. So on account of that alone, I can succeed on a charge of using public office for profit. Documentary evidence from bank accounts of buffer stock revealed that between 2018 and 2024, buffer stock transferred a total of 78,369,082 cedis and 4 pesos to Sortina Enterprises bank account at EcoBank and Republic Bank respectively. The payment were supposedly to pay for food supplies made by Sortina to schools under the school feeding program. Verified records, including way bills and store receipt vouchers from buffer stock, however, indicated that only 27,389,872 cedis out of the payments to Sortina were backed by supplies. There is no evidence whatsoever that the remaining 50,879,021 cedis and 4 pesos paid to the enterprise was backed by food supplies or any service rendered to buffer stock. A review of Sortina bank account revealed that the bulk of the payments which buffer stock made to Sortina Enterprises bank accounts, about 98% of the over 78 million, were instantly retransferred to Alkani Enterprise, Fahauza Ventures, and other entities owned and controlled by or affiliated to Hanan Abdul Wahab and Faiza Sedu Wuni, his wife. Under interrogation, Mr. Pr0sěcuted stated that although some of the funds received into Sortina's EcoBank and Republic Bank accounts were for the few genuine supplies backed by way bills and store receipt vouchers, in most instances, no supplies were made, but he noticed that buffer stock kept making payments to his company, Sortina Enterprise. He also admitted that other third-party companies, which our investigations have established to be license buying companies or suppliers to buffer stock, also made several payments into Sortina's account. He said he neither knew the promoters of these companies, nor did his company have any business dealing with them. He had no explanation as to why millions were transferred into his company's bank account, but observed that those payments, whether from buffer stock or from third parties, were made into Sortina's account on the instruction of his boss, Hanan Abdul Wahab. He further explained that whenever such payments were deposited in Sortina's account, he was prompted by Hanan Abdul Wahab to expect the transfer and was later instructed on where to move or retransfer the funds. In effect, Sortina became a conduit for Hanan Abdul Wahab and his wife to steal buffer stock funds without easy detection. Transaction analysis of Sortina's Republic Bank account and entities used as vehicle to launder the proceeds of the criminal enterprise established by Hanan and his wife corroborated the claims made by Mr. James Pr0sěcuted. For example, a review of some of the retransfers of the funds paid to Sortina Enterprise by Buffer Stock Company revealed as follows. From Sortina Enterprise to Hanan Abdul Wahab, 60,179,137 Ghana cedis. Sortina Enterprise to Alkani, 23,913,964 Ghana cedis and 90 pesos. From Sortina Enterprise to Fahauza, 500,000 Ghana cedis. Sortina Enterprise to Chain Homes, 550,000, making a total of transfers that we've tracked, from across the bank accounts of 40,493,102 Ghana cedis and 15 pesos. Now, ladies and gentlemen, as I've indicated, the proceeds of crime were used by the couple to acquire a lot of high-end luxury properties and, especially real estate across the country. Now, as is typical of all investigations conducted by the Economic and Organized Crime Office, contemporaneous tracing of the proceeds of crime has been undertaken, and we can confirm that the couple purchased a number of high-end real estate properties from their ill-gotten wealth. The properties are as follows. 1. A 5-bedroom house bought from Chain Homes Limited between February 2019 and December 2020 at a cost of $1,625,000. Of this amount, 5,758,165 Ghana cedis. That is the equivalent of 230,841 United States of American dollars, was paid directly from the accounts of the investigated entities. The balance was paid in cash to chain homes by the couple. Now, in criminal investigations, when large cash sums are being used to pay, that is prima facie evidence of money laundering. In July 2020, the couple purchased a 3-bedroom house at Cantonments from Golden Coast Developers Limited at a cost.
All right, abusunya teachers when in semi course our political highway such as Oshe Sika, Attorney General Ebu Budin Sika, Addo Hanan Wahab Mwedi abusunya. That is NPP former NPP appointees in Iskapa for Niskadie or Moji Buche gift to Wari Musika or Munsu or Mudia, which is 2.2 billion abusunya. I'm not aired and I was set down on with them and so when prison one day. So why am I also will be Miss Answer former MPP appointees, you know, a Brabone dear or Mabu be able to see no madam as some Japanese mekuti somewhere a course. Our political highway so ha a POG Media, Madam Massey.